There is a concept in all tactical games that tends to be a little invisible at times. From the larger scale of 40k or Age of Sigmar to the smaller skirmish of Kill Team or Warcry and any other tactical game involving units that move to a set parameter and can attack to set distances. At a basic level, not many casual players worry too much about it, but its existence still persists and some people fall prey to it all too often. We are, of course, talking about threat range, the distance between units, and what level of potential damage those ranges entail. I feel for some, the idea is hard to visualize, and in the heat of the moment for many, they may find themselves forgetting to check and fully understand what to expect. But let's take a little time and go over how threat range plays into all of it with visual aid. Before that, quick reminder that this is YouTube, and if you are new to the channel and want more tabletop content going forward, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Maybe the like if you're interested. And if you want to join in the conversation beyond the videos, there is a link to the community Discord in the description below. We'll be happy to have you. With all that said, let's dispel the mystery that is threat range. Let's start the examples from the Kill Team visual, parking lot setup. To the uninitiated, Kill Team units tend to all have similar movement stats, with some exceptions. 6 inches for a general move action, 3 inches for dashes, 8 inches for charges. In most instances, the shooting is infinite, although there are weapons restricted to 6 inches, some even less. Let's say our neophyte over there is currently ready to activate. On average, I find that the common opponent only really views the "what I can do" part of the game to determine the best end goal. What I like to do is visualize what my opponent could do. The Rubric Marine Gunner fills this role here. That looks a little like this. A few things. The first circle is the full potential of the Rubric Marine's move. Rules-wise, they are not allowed to move more than 6 inches during an activation, regardless of actions used. So that circle is the limit. The small ring around that is the engagement range. Keeping the neophyte outside of that range will prevent any chance of being charged. The next circle is the maximum potential distance the Rubric Marine can attack. It's using a Warp Flamer, which has a maximum range of 6 inches. These are all the ranges to keep in mind as you make your play. This is, of course, due to map layout. Let's try again, this time with terrain. Some buildings here and there. Now let's take a look at the possibilities. The giant circle is a bit more blob-like. This is more indicative of what these kinds of threat ranges look like. The visualization is very much in the Kill Team vein, but that gets translated to other modes with extra layers of potentiality. When we look at 40k, for instance, with a similar scaled down terrain setup, there is a similar general function. Tiers of circles for movements, shooting, charging. 40k, as well as other formats, adds something special into this equation though. Gambling, the roll of the dice. In some instances, more so than usual. This is what I mean. This Chaos War Dog will be our example. Parking lot rules again. Because 40k is done in phases, actions can only be taken in order without any divergence. So you can expect threat ranges to move and adjust in a more predictable way until you add in the chance of achieving an action. Let me run down the full extent of what this Huntsman War Dog represents in threat ranges. First up is the 12-inch movement circle, basic for a War Dog. Many times in games like 40k, units have different levels of ranged threats. In the case of this Huntsman, it comes with a Demon Breath Melt-A-Gun, with a 2-tier threat range like this. The close circle hits for more damage, maximum threat of 12 inches beyond the move. It also has a Demon Breath Spear, similar 2-tier circle, maximum range of 24 inches beyond the move. This is where the sort of gamble starts for whoever is the opponent to this unit. Each of these 2 weapons can be fired simultaneously, and depending on missions you truly need to complete, you'll have to decide if it's worth it to have your unit stand against potentially one or both of these attacks. A fully filled Rhino unit placed here at most could take between 1 and 12 damage potentially, possibly a dead Rhino. Just a little further, and the risk involves 5 to 20 damage from one weapon, as well as 1 to 6 from another, even more still from further in. A common thought is, if the unit doesn't need to take the risk of the brunt of the damage, why allow it? The gamble expands even further with the next possibility, the charge phase. Required to wreak havoc in close quarters, but this is the greatest of gambles. "40K's method in particular allows, at a base level, all units to potentially move 12 inches to get into melee with its target. Potentially, because that distance is tied to the ultimate endorphin rush for any player, a dice roll. If I were to represent this as a circle, that image would be a gradient, because as an opponent, you get to pick your risk. You get to play in the realm of statistical chance. Placing your unit within 10 inches might be a calculated chance for victory, even potentially getting the upper hand by drawing an enemy out that doesn't end up fighting safely in the arms of mutual combat. Now, there can be variables in all of this across different units and even rule sets, units that add other layers of potential distance gains in the form of other rules, like being able to charge after advancing. But for the most part, when a unit is limited by the potential of a dice roll, it adds a layer of risk-reward to the general strategy of the game that at times can be electric. Even though I usually prefer the solid numbers of Kill Team, there really is something about this gamble that feels exhilarating, risking a shot at victory on a single action. Now, a more advanced way to apply this threat range concept is acceptable loss. Playing a horde squad of 20 neophytes at the far end of the War Dog's potential charge range bubble restricts possible loss. In this instance, the only weapon that can hit them is the 2-attack Demon Breast Spear. At most, only 2 neophytes could die. That's fairly acceptable. But if there is an objective that requires the unit to move within a much closer range to where the War Dog can get to, they would be looking at potentially 3 deaths from shooting, upwards of 8 from melee, potentially 14 if the tank shock stratagem is employed. This is where you, as the commander of the neophytes, would need to choose. Is the points gain needed? In a worst case scenario, 17 dead neophytes doesn't equate to a dead squad. It guarantees 2 full required player turns for the War Dog to finish the job, and they can always fall back if they want to potentially extend that. Is that an acceptable loss? If it's the last round of the game and that position gives the Genestealer cult the win if they survive, it most assuredly does. But if it is early on, and both teams are fairly even, it might not be as worth it to burn such a squad. Although, from the perspective of the GSC player, that squad will most likely come back. I mean, everything is an acceptable loss when you have near infinite respawns, right? And again, this thought process is applied to all things tactics of this nature, even games that use more grid-like systems for movement and combat. Games like BattleTech come to mind. Managing the risk and reward system through spacing and timing is what creates the symphony of a good strategist and player, and it is one of the few ways to combat the RNG nature of games like these. Of course, tying in terrain that limits movement, as well as more units and abilities to expand the amount of threat range bubbles you'll have to deal with, further complicates things. But boiling the interactions down like this is a good way, I feel, to provide an uncluttered approach to this strategic understanding. And hopefully, it has helped you learn how to approach strategy games, like those from Games Workshop and beyond. Take this knowledge, assimilate it, practice it, and crush your enemies. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I have helped in unlocking your mind by dispelling any mystery around this basic strategic concept. Maybe you already understood it and just wanted to see my rendition of the idea. Thanks as well. If you have anything to add to the topic, please let people know in the comments below. And don't forget, we have that community Discord linked in the description. Join up if you want to continue the conversation. As always, likes for the like god and subscribes for the subscribe throne. I am Kimerix, and I'll see you in the next one.